Welcome back to the Agentic Insider. I'm your host, Phillip Swan. In this show, we explore cutting-edge ideas and trends in AI and data, as well as hear from other industry thought leaders in the AI space. This podcast is brought to you by Iridius AI, committed to safe and responsible AI innovation. Let's dig in. Welcome to the first episode of the Agentic Insider. We are super excited to be here. I'm Phillip Swan. I'm one of the co-founders at Iridius AI, and I'm responsible for products and go-to-market. I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I'm super excited to be here changing the world.
Hey everybody, my name is Alistair Lowe-Norris. I'm one of the co-founders of Iridius AI, and I'm the Chief Responsible AI Officer at Iridius AI. I was in Microsoft for 23 years, leading engineering and leading large change and transformation projects across the organization.
So, what are we here to talk about? There is a gap that we recognized in the AI industry. And this is how Alistair and I came together originally. Alistair, do you want to talk about that gap?
Sure. I mean, I think there's a gap right now in how people feel about implementing AI systems and whether they think that they're safe and responsible. Are they able to trust the AI? It's one thing to have compliance, but compliance is really a minimum bar. It's how do you feel about the AI, and how do you know that it's being transparent in the decisions that it makes? How are you able to be sure that it's not biased? And how do you know whether it's using your data in a responsible way? And there's some really significant issues, I think, at the moment in the industry around being able to be sure about that. And that's the gap that we're seeing significantly right now. What do you think, Phillip?
What I'm seeing is that people are going, yes, but, right? So, and the yes, but part is we still need to innovate. But where it's getting clogged up is like, are they picking the right use case? First of all, I mean, that is one of the things that I think we've seen pretty consistently across the board, right? Is picking the right use case is really important. I know this sounds simple and basic, but it is really hard, in fact, to do, because you've got to start, what is the business outcome that you're trying to achieve? And maybe AI isn't actually suited for that. So everybody's thinking, well, AI can solve this, AI can solve that, and the other, right? Best things in sliced bread and the toast maker, right? It's not.
But it's just a tool. It really is. And so if you can't come up with a great ROI for this, you can't figure out what exactly you want it to do, and you don't have a clarity on those things, then throwing technology at the problem is never going to help, no matter whether it's AI or anything.
I mean, it's one thing if it's a consumer app, right? Where you're like ChatGPT, which is also a business app, but consumers are using it. And some of these others like Claude and Gemini and others, right? So it's really important to know that ChatGPT is not your AI, right? That's not your answer to AI, right? And especially in the world of B2B, right? So there's one thing in consumer where you're trying to figure out and using intelligent search. I mean, one of my favorite tools, as you know, Alistair, is Perplexity. Why? Because Perplexity saves me at least 80% of my research time. It's a phenomenal tool for that, right?
It is.
We all learn our tools that we use. But when you start thinking about a real business application, right, what is the core problem? And one of the challenges that we've seen beyond and the use case is the data itself. AI relies on data. I mean, we're seeing noisy data out there it's more common than we knew this would be a common issue, right, Alistair?
We did. I mean, I think anyone would clearly understand that AI is built on data, and if you've got garbage going in, you get garbage coming out. So there's a huge need to be able to build out and refine and clean up the data so that it can be in a format that AI can understand. but the ability to be able to, agentify that data and actually be able to have agents working on it and analyzing it and exposing it and taking those older, legacy systems and being able to front end them with an intelligent agent, okay, or intelligent agents is a huge opportunity. And I think the data that's locked into those old systems that is very difficult to be able to access, suddenly there's an opportunity to be able to open that up so much more than it ever has been before.
Listen, one of our lead clients, who will remain nameless, especially for purposes of this podcast, that is actually the core the initial thing that we to agentify. Now, everybody in the industry is talking about agentless, agentify that. 2025 is the year of the agent. There's no question about it. But Alistair, what is an agent? Everybody has a different definition. So what do you think about an agent?
I think you can think of this as an intelligent, okay, autonomous, okay, individual, if you want to call it that, that is capable of being able to think and reason and make decisions with the relevant human in the loop or on the loop to be able to help guide it where necessary. But we're talking about things that can reason and think. They have a code of conduct. They have ethics. They understand, a set of how to work inside an organization and what they're entitled to do and what they're not. And when you have those sorts of agents, suddenly you get a lot more opportunity to be able to move ahead. I mean, even OpenAI is talking about being able to introduce virtual employees, okay, at a few $1,000s a month, okay, and there's an opportunity here to be able to gain, economies of scale and also expand capabilities for organizations that they've never had before.
So one of the challenges that I see personally in this is everybody's rushing down. I call this the AI arms race,
Mhm.
right? So everybody's trying to stay ahead, which is so people are working to agentify this, to identify the other. But when I've explored it, it seems like the same software paradigm that others are thinking about versus a true dynamic, which means it's more static in nature, it's more task-based. But in my mind, an agent is goal-oriented, which gets back to what you were referring to, which we call entitlements, right? What is the agent actually entitled to do? How do they behave? Because guess what? If you give something the ability to we've seen Sony even run into a situation where they put two agents together and they started talking gibberish, created their own language, literally.
Let's take the example here and to try and break it down, make it a little bit easier if this is a new concept for people. So if you were to go to OpenAI, so to open ChatGPT or Perplexity or something and say, hey, I'd like you to be a weight loss coach. I want you to be able to help build me a program to be able to, so that I can lose 10 pounds. And I want you to be able to help me put that together over the course of the next 2 months. And I want you to be that coach, and it can interactively help you do that. That's fine. That's a sort of a role that it can play. But when you give it a goal, like you talked about, then now if it's intelligent, it's able to be able to go off and figure out, how do I achieve that goal? I don't know. I can be given a compass and a map by my creator, but then I have to go off and self-organize. I have to talk to other agents. I have to interact in a multi-agent system to be able to figure out how to achieve that goal and whether the goal needs to be adapted, when I report back on progress. So that goal thing really is fundamentally different than just the idea of an AI taking on a role or an agent taking on a role.
For the audience, Alistair and I go to a fire station. We try to go once a week, and we literally work two whiteboards and simultaneously and come up with stuff. And one of the things that we came up with is, and very early on in the discussions, is what happens if the corporate culture is X and you don't help the agents understand what that corporate culture is? You're going to find a situation where your agents are running rogue against your corporate culture, and that is going to be seen as a failure by companies. Would you tend to agree with that, Alistair?
I would, absolutely. So imagine you've got an agent, or you want to build agents to work in Disney compared to working in Goldman Sachs. Their corporate culture is different. The code of conduct is different. The ways, the tools that people, email and talk to each other with and chat about and schedule projects with are different. So the agent has to know how it's supposed to behave in that organization. It needs to know how it's what the employee manual is, just like any other employee coming through. It needs to understand how to exist in that organization and how to interact with the humans and the other agents that are there. But every company is very different. A military defense contractor compared to Disney, compared to a company that compared to a public sector organization, the exact requirements as to how it needs to operate are going to be fundamentally different, Philip.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, in a future episode, we're going to have our mutual friend Ron Schwartz, who is a change management guru, as you know, and we've had multiple conversations, multi-hour long conversations with, and I think we blew his mind.
Yeah.
it's, it's the best way to do it, because it's what you can do. You've not just got humans in the loop. It's not just the agent to agent communication. It's the agent to human communication. It's the human to agent communication. It's the different combinations thereof. And everything needs to be right from a customer experience standpoint for this to be adopted, right? And in my mind, I don't care whether you're a Fortune 5, a Global 2000, or an individual consumer. You're going to want your data to be private and secure, irrespective of who you are. And in the world of agentic systems, that's really hard to do.
It is. And the speed at which these systems operate is huge. So if you've got a database with 1 billion records and you want to identify it, the last thing you want that agent to do is to publish it on the internet for everybody to see. Okay. But it could do that in seconds. And that's the sort of thing where there needs to be a level of control. And there are standards out there. There are many standards. ISO has like over 70 standards relating to artificial intelligence. OECD, NIST, these other organizations do, let alone all the legislation that's out there. And all of that guides what an AI system should do. But none of them really are written at the agent level. And the technology is moving so aggressively ahead, or so far out ahead of the standards right now, that it's very important for organizations to think about and skate to where the puck will be in order to be able to get control of this.
You bring up an extra point, is, where the puck will be. I'm an old rugby player, and we talk about you play to where the ball is going to be. It's the same idea, and this is how we do go to market. You got to play for it. I came up with this analogy, as you know, Alistair, because it was late one Saturday night, and you and I were texting with each other. It's like taking a ship at night in the middle of winter and sailing into the Arctic Ocean, and sailing there blindly at night, not even knowing that icebergs exist, right? So I'm of the belief is that a lot of the reasons why many of these projects are not going into production from R&D facilities, other than the fact that it's not a right AI use case, their data is not right, is the risks there, that they don't know what they don't know.
Yes. It's unknown unknowns. It really is. The risks are huge. And so it's very easy for, large and small enterprises to simply go, you know what, we're going to stop this. Okay. No more. Basically, there is no use of Gen AI. We're not having anybody put it into Perplexity, Chat GPT, Bard, any of the others. No, Mistral, it doesn't really matter what it is, but we're not using it. And they put out a policy to be able to stop it. In some ways, putting out a policy won't do anything, because you still get what you and I would call shadow AI. People still doing it, but when they shouldn't be. And so the companies then bring the CISO and the CIO in and put some technology in place, and now it's formally blocked. You can't even do that anymore. But what you just did is stifle innovation. The idea isn't to basically say, well, okay, I don't really understand what these risks are. I don't know where they are. So the easiest thing for me to do is to turn it all off, because that obviously gains you control, but it basically moves the slider from innovation to zero at that point. And I think there's an opportunity here to enable organizations to build, safe, responsible, and fully compliant AI, so that these organizations can innovate with confidence, no risks, no guesswork, just AI you can trust.
Going back onto that, so we don't think in terms of just simple privacy issues. We think in terms of rather complex privacy issues. I know this because I work so closely with you. Um, and what do you think many companies are not doing when it comes to the confidentiality of their data? I mean, virtually every company out there, I won't say 100%, but uh, virtually every company, they use TLS 1.3 or they use AES 256 encryption at rest. What are they missing?
I think when you think about AI, there's three ways to think about it, and this is how Iridius talks about it too. You want AI that is ethical, you want AI that is safe, and you want AI that is good for people and good for the planet. And when we talk about ethics, we're talking about you want AI to be fair. You want it to be inclusive to groups of people and to society. You want it to be accountable. Okay, so you want it to have ethical leadership as part as the way it's built, and you want to ensure that there are guardrails and things in place. I think also you want it to be transparent. Okay, you need to be able to help, transparent and open. You need to not only know what decisions it's making, you want to know how it was trained, and you want that information to be proactively disclosed. You don't want it kept secretly behind the scenes. And I think, from the ethics side of things, you also have to be able to make sure that this is explainable and interpretable. So you've got to make sure that when you have an AI that says you're denied a loan, and you ask, why was I denied a loan? And the answer is because the computer said no. But why did the computer say no? Well, because it said no. What you want to do is explain, but in a way that they can understand, and you want to meet them on their level. And I think that's crucially important with the ethics side of things. And you're talking about AES encryption and things like this. I think that's really where it comes into AI is safe. You want it to be secure. You want it to be safe. You want it to be reliable and consistent. You want it to be robust and resilient when things go wrong, either attackers from the outside or the AI itself starts to drift from where it was intended. And it also has to respect privacy and data protection laws. I mean, go back 20 years when GDPR and some of the CCPA and the California privacy regulations and so on were starting to come in over the past 20 years. Organizations put together privacy policies and data protection policies, and they said, okay, we are going to put data protection guidelines around our organization on how to manage that privacy of information that we have. I think when you agentify data, which is what you were talking about earlier, you end up with a significant problem where you could well expose that data in a way that breaks these data protection rules. And I think that if Jandy was on here as our chief data officer and was talking about this, I think Jandy would clearly say that the fundamental rules of things like GDPR are you can't take multiple different data sets that were already anonymized and bring them back and work out what was the de-anonymized data from all of those. But agents can do that in seconds. So agents need to have these entitlements, as we were saying, that guide them on how to obey the ethics and safety rules. And they need to have that as their core of their being. That way, they can live within not only what the organizational guidelines, but they can really live and make decisions based on those ethical principles that are relevant to the company.
I'm going to give a specific customer example of a use case. I won't say who the customer is or get into absolute specifics of it, but they have billions of rows of customer data, of live customer data that is clearly very dirty. They're very sophisticated in their use of tools, but they still can't get those tools to work. And the reason is primarily because of the origination data, right? It's not clean. So effectively what they were trying to optimize their multi-billion-dollar annual marketing spend, so that they're not attracting a 65-year-old woman in South Dakota for a product that's really intended for somebody in California, as an example. That was a very real example.
Completely agree.
Right. So these are types of so that data needs to get cleaned. That data needs to not only get cleaned, it needs to be accessible by the data scientists who are then going to be driving it back to the line of business to say, here's how you target, spend here, spend there. These are the messages you've got to send out to these people now, here and there, without, to your point, exposing any personal identifying information or PII data. And they may sound basic, but you know what? We've seen situations where whole company's employee records get shared and where the CEO's salary is being published to employees. We have seen that happen.
Oh, absolutely. So, I mean, look at it this way. What you're talking about is taking every data source inside an organization, respecting the data protection rules around that data source and the combination of any of those data sources together, and then finding a way to be able to expose this. This seems like an absolutely mammoth, Herculean task. How would you say we would think about that?
So what were typically Herculean tasks for us is that what we think about we would think in traditionally in SaaS models, right? How do I go and build a piece of software? It could be small, it could be extremely large, that will perform a task or a series of tasks. And the usability of that has become challenged, as people know, through which is why so many SaaS startups have failed in so many years, is one of the core reasons they haven't addressed the customer pain point. As you know, I don't talk in customer pain points, I talk in migraine levels, because we've all had a migraine or a really bad headache, and we'll literally pay anything in the world to get rid of that headache, right? It's the same thing here. You know, while the limits are endless of what we can do, it's about focus. And for us, we really encourage people to think about that use case that's going to not only make you successful as the person responsible for deploying a solution, but your C-suite is seeing a result of everything else. So all of a sudden now you're gaining credibility within your organization that you know how to build this stuff from the get-go.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think you have to find a use case with solid ROI and that really has potentially has a struggle with the data right now to be able to access it in some way. And I think then at that point you have a compelling need that can be solved. And I think that's the crucial piece here.
So what do you think some of the misconceptions are? And I mean, I started off by saying, everybody thinks AI is the best thing since sliced bread and and the toast machine, right? And the toaster. But
Yep.
it's you know what what do you think that we should be looking at in terms of, can you agentify a particular use case? Because not everything should be agentified, right?
It shouldn't. But I think the question is what is it you're trying to solve? And then what's the best tool for the job? Just because we happen to have a great a great ability with AI doesn't mean we should use it for everything, to your point. In some cases it might be a sledgehammer to crack a nut. So I don't think it's always the case. And I think that many of the tools that build agents and systems out there right now are mostly taking Zapier-like workflows, series of stepwise workflows that branch, along a particular chain step by step, and then at some point they get to the end and they have a sort of an interactive chatbot on the front of it. That's not really what we're talking about with self-healing, self-learning, intelligent agents. And I think the opportunity here is everybody thinks that that AI can solve everything, but it isn't true. And I think it's important to be able to understand and clarify the use case and the business need first. And then the question is this something that AI can solve? Okay. AI is not inherently neutral. AI itself doesn't solve everything. Even OpenAI publishes on their website that their AI is biased. It was trained on Western data. So it is heavily Western biased. Okay. So if you want to be able to choose AI, the question is which AI? Because it's not all the same. And then how do you want to use that AI? Okay, what type of data? How do you want, are you talking about, being able to visualize information from it, or is it part of automating a process? How is it going to work with humans, and in what way is it going to work with humans? All of these are the sorts of collaborative conversations that help people, I think, figure out from a misconception perspective what are the ways that they need to solve this. But it is hard, Philip. I think this is I am a customer. I have a problem. I don't know how to solve it. Can AI help? And that's the question. Right?
So it's been almost a year since we founded the company, right? And we have definitely pivoted multiple times since we do it. But when we started the company with the focus on safe and responsible AI. And we have not wavered from that. And I'm really, really proud of that. What we're doing with it has definitely pivoted, because things are changing so rapidly in the marketplace. What would you think about our purpose at Iridius?
I think we talked about this a little bit earlier here, but I mean, I think we're there to be able to empower organizations to build safe, responsible, and compliant AI at scale. Okay, that's what we want to do. We want to help enterprises do this. So, I mean, our platform is about accelerating that AI innovation and unlocking it that other people can't access with real-time compliance monitoring, embedded security, dynamic agent orchestration, all of those sorts of things that enables those organizations to rapidly create the AI solutions without compromising the security or performance. And I think that's the thing here. Nobody comes running to companies going, what's missing in my life is more compliance. Okay, give me more of that compliance. That's what I really love. But what they want to do just about enough compliance, but no more. But if you can build something that is compliant from the inside out, but not only compliant with the baseline standards, but it takes the best of the best of the best practices worldwide, every single standard, every single piece of legislation, and ensures that as this agent is built, it is compliant automatically, okay, during the build process, during execution, and then it's monitored to make sure that it continues to stay that way, then suddenly compliance is just not just table stakes, but it's just done. And then you can start focusing on the use cases and the innovation and the ROI without worrying so much about, am I going to meet all of the regulatory needs that I know I need to for whatever I build?
But also governance and safety is really important on there, because governance, in my mind, goes way beyond anything that any standard or any regulation that was written by lawyers will ever meet. I mean, as important as the EU AI Act is, it's already out of date. I mean, we are barreling down the road towards artificial general intelligence. It's
We
going to
are.
be here sooner than we all think. And it's real. It's very real. The EU AI Act doesn't even cover for that. So it goes back to the just because you could doesn't mean to say you should syndrome, right?
I couldn't agree more, and I think that's why Iridius was founded in the first place here. We want to enable every single enterprise to unlock innovation and ROI. Okay. And in order to be able to do that, we have to take the risks away. We have to make sure that they can look at something and say, there are no risks, there's no guesswork, it's just AI you can trust. Okay. And so if we're going to be able to do that, then there's a gap right now between AI potential and AI risk and AI safety and concerns. And if we can help organizations realize that those problems can be mitigated and dealt with, then suddenly they've got the opportunity to be able to say, for those use cases where it's relevant, okay, let's figure out how AI can actually help us, okay, to be the best company that we can be and really be successful.
So coming towards a little bit of a close here, I mean, I feel what makes us different is two things. One is the team that we've assembled, right? The first time I walked into a room with all of us together was in July of 2024, sorry. And I felt for the first time since I left Microsoft 20 years ago, I was finally with some really bright people that we could solve any problem in the world. I felt immediately at home. I felt that we were on, as a team, we are fundamentally, we're beyond friends at this point. We are family. I know people talk about family, but we absolutely are. Jandi and I have formed such a close working relationship. Professional Peter, Spencer, Janelle, everybody, Catherine. We're all working on this in lockstep and being in unison and having a force multiplication effect, because you've got consistent messaging from every person in the organization, from Mike, the CEO, on down the organization, is super critical. So that's one part that I see as being different. But it's our combined experience that really makes us different. It's that diversity that makes us different, because as you know, I've had years of experience in the world of security, right? Um, and having years of that, and being responsible product, we have built security features, enterprise grade security features, right into the product. We have built, through your experience with regulatory compliance and change management, we've been able to build this system that literally groks. And for people who are not familiar with the term grok, it comes from a 1960 sci-fi movie by Robert Heinlein called Stranger in a Strange Land. And it's where the aliens, merge with the other body to really get a 360 view of the customer, including emotional attachment. And so it's being able to have that loving understanding of a document, because you pointed this out to me months ago, that if you even look at a standard, everybody thinks that a standard, take 42001 as an example, right? There are sections in that document that reference research papers that are not even in the document, right?
I mean, I'm going to riff off that just for 1 second. If you want to audit against an ISO standard, 42001, as you're talking about, okay, you can go and audit against that. It came out last year for auditing purposes. You can. But what most people say is, okay, they look at the lines in the document, okay, or the specific requirements, and they just audit against that. But what they're missing is that document inherits from 43 other ISO standards relating to AI, to whistleblowing, to risk management, to the way that quality is created, okay? And it also refers out to significant academic papers, okay, and thought leadership papers, and you have to understand all of those if you're going to implement the best of the best practices. So if you just look at what's in 42001 and not all the things that it inherits from, okay, then you're really missing all of the key pieces that all of these thought leaders around the world have spent, decades putting together and laying out there. And that's the big miss too.
So to finish up, what we really talked about from today, we talked about agents, their entitlements, their personalities. So to sum that up, you've got to be careful for this stuff. You've got to be really sensitive. You've got to be thinking about the complete picture, and you need help. And this is where companies like Iridius really come to terms to really allow you to innovate, to what Alistair was saying, in a very, very simple manner. So it's going to be operational efficiency. So you're not going to have to pay a huge agency to go and build out all of these prototypes. You are literally in minutes able to build rapid prototypes that you could be testing with your users, and all that are compliant from the get-go. So you're not going to have to worry about GDPR. You don't have to worry about EUA Act. You're not going to have to worry about California or Utah or Colorado in the States, or or any of the other states that are going to be deploying AI regulations, right?
It's about empowering AI innovation with confidence. I think that's really what it is.
That's it. So what can you expect from the future episodes from us? Well, next week, we're going to be bringing on Spencer Bentley. And Spencer is our technical fellow. Spencer is a lovely, he is one of my favorite humans on the planet. And Spencer is not only our technical fellow, but he is also the leader of OpenAI's developer forum with over 1 million developers. It's a volunteer position that he has, but this gives some insights as to what the use cases are and what people are working on. That will be an episode not to miss. I really look for it. And in additional episodes, we're going to have people like Ron Schwartz on, who, as I mentioned earlier, is is one of the most amazing change management gurus that I've ever met. You're going to get some. When he and Alistair get in the room, I just sit back and let it go, because it's a very interesting conversation. And other leaders from the industry you're going to have on the podcast. So we encourage you, first of all, thank you for listening, and we encourage you to subscribe to our podcast, and you're going to get some fun episodes. Anything else to add?
Nope, absolutely. I think it's if you can envision it, you can achieve it, and that's really what we're looking to be able to help people do.
Exactly. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Phillip.
That's a wrap on this week's episode of the Agentic Insider. Thank you for listening. For show notes and more, please visit agenticinsider.show. To learn more about Iridius, visit iridius.ai. We'll see you next time.